So I don't know what Proposition thinks happening in the Cabinet Office in the Knesset right now is, but apparently they're having their "Do we stop Iran getting nuclear weapons or hunt Holocaust survivors" meeting, where it's only one or the other. We don't necessarily, not Holocaust survivors. Stop laughing, I've said that. We don't necessarily think that's what's taking place, right? First of all, I'm going to prove why there are lots of benefits of continuing to make the effort to hunt the perpetrators of the Holocaust and these war criminals, which are completely irrelevant to whether you find them or not. But furthermore, I'm going to prove things like how this has other utilitarian benefits, like preventing future atrocities, like giving restorative justice to the survivors who aren't being hunted. Okay, right, so first of all, some direct rebuttal, okay? So he said it's very hard to prosecute these people, right? That's just not an argument for stopping all effort to find them. That, like, we don't have to defend a claim that we have to try and prosecute everyone we hear a slight rumour about and have no idea where they are. Actually, the problem is, like, for a lot of people, we do know where they are, right? We know who they are, we know roughly which country they're in. It's just a matter of time before we can go and find them, which we think is worth it, right? First of all, like, furthermore, it's actually easier now than ever to actually find these people, because they're much more old, so they're much more likely to give up, because they can't run anymore. Right? We think actually, more than that, they're going to not try as hard to move from location to location all the time. We think you shouldn't stop that effort to try and get them, right? So furthermore, he said, this idea that people feel really sympathetic because they're so old and frail, right? We just don't see this as being a problem. This especially isn't a problem when you take them into the court and then they have to answer questions like, how many children did you kill? How effectively did you operate that part of the concentration camp? We think sympathy, if it does exist, fades pretty quickly, right? Then this idea of political capital, and Derek tried this in round one, but we're not letting him get away with it again here. Again, you don't just have a sort of limited sum total or something like that. We can use it on one thing or the other thing. I'm actually going to prove later on in this debate how actually this gives us around more political capital from countries like the USA. Then this idea that extrajudicial killings are wrong, right? We don't actually think that we have to defend extrajudicial killings, right? We just want to capture them. We actually defend something like doing everything that Israel did to Eichmann up until the point where they executed him, right? Like you take him out of that country and thank you, prosecuting him, you could put him in prison. Okay. First of all, Israel as a representative of the Jewish people. Because they said Israel has a political capital problem. And we agree, actually. This problem is twofold, right? The first problem is that for large numbers of Jewish people, it seems to be moving away from its original goal, which is being like a locus of representation of Jewish interests and the Jewish people. This is because of things like claims that, you know, they're doing bad things in Iran and so on, and they're no longer doing this. We think this is the most direct way Israel can prove that it's continuing to represent the most symbolically Jewish interest that founded the state of Israel, which is a safe haven for the Jewish people, where they can know that they will always be protected, that their enemies are the state of Israel's enemies, and it will not give up in any efforts like to find these people or to stop these people when during the Holocaust, during the war, so many countries gave up in trying to resist the Holocaust and trying to resist Hitler, right? We think that's a massive utilitarian, current and ongoing benefit to those Jewish people in feeling safe and actually suppresses the more kind of militant Zionism, no thank you, which they claim is so harmful to political capital. But secondly, right, like they say just other countries don't really like it, or that it'll limit the US support in the US lobbies, right? We say this isn't a sum total thing. We actually say most people in the world agree that like the Holocaust was one of the worst things that ever happened and that people still deserve justice for it. We say when Israel proves itself to people within the US to be more directly closer to its aims of helping the Jewish people be safe, that actually gives them more political capital to defend themselves against other countries, right? Second of all, preventing future atrocities. Because what actually happens when we have these trials? There's a possibility that fewer of these trials would take place because we are just capturing fewer of these people, even if it is only just 1 or 2 people in the next decade. First of all, a large amount more understanding comes out from these trials because these people explain what caused them to act in the way they did. They explain how the forces of propaganda, no thank you, worked upon them in certain ways, and that means we can be more able to look out for how those propagandas are working within our own societies or within societies in other countries. Second of all, what they're actually doing is they're making future would-be war criminals think, oh look, as long as you hide and you lay low long enough, the people who you committed atrocities against will give up, right? It's just a matter of time. There is a way out. Look, Argentina's great for it. So many people are there, they're not even looking for them anymore. So when we have people who would commit genocides in other countries, or when we have, like, more directly, people who would commit atrocities against the Jewish people like the government of Iran and so on, we think actually it's very harmful to say, not only like, are we going to let you get away with it, we're not even going to look for you anymore, right? Because we think that up until a certain point, you can just say, it's time to look into it.
Sure. Okay, even if the man is guilty, isn't it a pretty bad news day for AIPAC when he's old, he's coming out of the courtroom, and has just been found innocent by an Israeli court? That's pretty bad PR.
Okay, that's just an argument against prosecuting them when you don't have enough evidence, right? We don't think they've proven that there is no one else left in the world who you have enough evidence to prosecute, right? We think there are cases where you should look for these people, especially when it is like the main people in the Nazi war cabinet, right? There are several people who are instrumental in organising the Holocaust, who we know who they are, and we could very easily prove them. We just have to keep looking for them, and eventually we'll find a few. We don't think they've proven why we should keep looking for those people, right? Okay, finally, restorative justice for survivors. Why is this actually a decision that isn't ours to make? Why is it actually we're taking away something that other people had a sort of sense of desert towards, right? Because this justice isn't really the state of Israel's to give up, or the government of the state of Israel's to give up. This justice is something that is deserved by Holocaust survivors, or people who lost large numbers of members of their family within the Holocaust, or had their entire lives destroyed. Because restorative justice works in the sense, no thank you, that you feel that there's a giant moral imbalance that's been brought to the world and brought to your life, which even if not completely sort of removed by things like these people being prosecuted, is at least made slightly more negated, right? At least your world is slightly less crazy and imbalanced, and sort of this justice makes you feel a little bit better. We feel that when these people have had everything taken away from them, it's like perfectly legitimate for them to expect this kind of compensation of restorative justice brought to them by at least continuing to look for these Holocaust survivors, but at least in more cases, at least finding a few, right? So actually, when you have a complete rights claim towards this justice, we don't think it's legitimate for us or our other utilitarian reasons to decide to take that away from them, right? It's because it's not our justice to get. Furthermore, in terms of still thinking towards the future, actually showing that we're continuing to try and look for these people, and in many cases trying to continue to try them, is the best way that actually people within countries like Germany can disassociate from their past. Because it's no longer, like every time you see an individual who's being hunted, that individual becomes more notorious, or you see him in the court, it's that individual and his actions resulted in the Holocaust, not German people resulted in the Holocaust. That's the best way that they can disassociate for their own past. And we think it's actually perfectly legitimate for Germany to want to do things like have Israel cooperate with it, with the large number of witnesses who live within Israel, with the large resources Israel has and the large political capital Israel has, to help Germany find those people for themselves so that they can disassociate from their past, which continues to have ongoing benefits. So actually, it doesn't matter if you find them, we think it's helpful to find them, but it's also helpful to just keep looking.